I spent 43 years building Reynolds Plumbing and Heating from a one-man operation into a thriving company worth over $3 million. It was my legacy, my retirement plan, and the culmination of a lifetime of hard work. Then, in just 2 weeks while I was recovering from heart surgery, my own daughter sold it for a fraction of its value to her husband's college friend. The worst part wasn't discovering the business was gone. It was realizing she had meticulously planned this betrayal for months, waiting for me to be at my most vulnerable. When I confronted her with the evidence, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Dad, you're confused. You have dementia. You agreed to this sale." I was 71 years old, but I'd never felt so helpless in my entire life. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. My name is Frank Reynolds, and for over 4 decades, I was the proud owner of Reynolds Plumbing and Heating in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I started the company in 1978 with nothing but a used van, a box of tools, and determination. In the early days, I worked 16-hour shifts, answering emergency calls in the middle of winter, crawling through muddy crawl spaces, and slowly building a reputation for honest work at fair prices. My wife Margaret supported us by working as a school secretary while I got the business off the ground. We lived frugally, reinvested almost everything back into the company, and eventually, all that hard work began to pay off. The early years weren't easy. I remember one particularly brutal winter in 1979 when temperatures dropped to 20 below zero and calls for burst pipes flooded in faster than I could handle them. I worked 36 hours straight, catching 20-minute naps in my van between jobs. Margaret would pack thermoses of hot coffee and bring them to me at job sites. We were young, determined, and believed wholeheartedly in the American dream. That hard work would eventually lead to success. By 1982, I had scraped together enough to hire my first employee, a young apprentice named Chuck Daly. Chuck was rough around the edges but had natural talent with pipes and an incredible work ethic. He became like a younger brother to me, and his presence allowed me to take on more jobs and finally start growing the business. There was a defining moment in 1984 that I still remember clearly. The Lakeside Mall, the biggest shopping center in our county, had a catastrophic plumbing failure during their grand opening weekend. Water was pouring through the ceiling, damaging expensive merchandise and threatening to close the mall indefinitely. The big plumbing companies in town were either booked solid or wanted to charge emergency rates that would have bankrupted the mall's owners. Chuck and I worked for 60 straight hours, sleeping in shifts on cots in the maintenance room, and managed to fix the entire system by Monday morning. That job put Reynolds Plumbing on the map. The mall owners were so impressed they gave us a maintenance contract that provided steady income for years, allowing me to hire 2 more plumbers and expand our services. By the mid-1980s, I had 3 employees and had purchased our first commercial property, a small workshop with an office in the front. Margaret quit her job at the school to handle the growing administrative work, answering phones, scheduling jobs, and managing the books. Our family was growing too. Our son Michael was born in 1982, followed by Lisa in 1985. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom home, and while we weren't wealthy, we were comfortable and proud of what we were building together. The 1990s brought significant expansion. We added heating services after I earned my HVAC certification, which opened up entirely new revenue streams. By 1995, Reynolds Plumbing and Heating employed 15 people and operated from a proper commercial facility with offices, a warehouse, and a fleet of 7 service vans. Chuck had been promoted to operations manager, handling day-to-day scheduling while I focused on business development and major contracts. Our reputation for reliability and fair pricing had spread throughout the Milwaukee area, and we were regularly winning contracts with commercial properties, housing developments, and government buildings. Margaret and I were finally able to build our dream home in 1997, nothing extravagant, but a comfortable 4-bedroom colonial on a nice lot with a workshop where I could tinker on weekends. The children were thriving. Michael was showing academic promise, and Lisa was popular and athletic, a star on her high school volleyball team. Life felt good, like all our sacrifices were paying off. Then came the first major crisis. In 1999, Chuck was diagnosed with lymphoma. He was only 41 and had been my right-hand man for 17 years. His illness left a massive hole in our operations, and I found myself working 70-hour weeks again to keep things running smoothly while he underwent treatment. Margaret stepped up too, returning to a more active role in the business while still managing our home and teenagers. Chuck fought hard but passed away in 2000, leaving behind his wife Alina and their 2 young children. It was the first time I'd lost someone truly close to me, and it hit harder than I expected. I established a college fund for Chuck's kids and kept Alina on our company health insurance for years afterward, feeling it was the least I could do for the family of a man who had helped build Reynolds Plumbing and Heating. After Chuck's death, I promoted Jeff Martinez to operations manager. Jeff had joined us as a journeyman plumber in 1992 and had proven himself not just technically proficient, but also good with customers and other employees. He didn't have Chuck's natural leadership abilities, but he was organized and reliable. Under Jeff's operational management, we continued to grow steadily through the early 2000s. The business weathered the 2008 financial crisis better than most. While new construction contracts dried up, our service and maintenance division actually grew as people chose to repair rather than replace aging systems. We diversified further, adding water purification services and expanding into light commercial refrigeration. By 2010, we employed 28 people and operated a fleet of 15 service vehicles. As I entered my 60s, I began thinking about eventual retirement, though I had no immediate plans to step away. Margaret had developed arthritis and had scaled back her involvement in the business, with a proper office manager now handling the administrative functions she had once performed. Our children had chosen different paths. Michael graduated from Stanford with a computer science degree and took a job with a tech company in Silicon Valley, moving him thousands of miles away. Lisa attended the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, earning a marketing degree, and worked for various local companies. Neither had shown interest in joining the family business, which didn't particularly bother me. I wanted them to follow their own passions. In 2011, Jeff Martinez announced he was moving to Florida for family reasons. This left me with a significant gap in leadership, just as I was hoping to reduce my own workload. Fortunately, Tony Blackwell had joined us 5 years earlier and had shown exceptional potential. Originally hired as a senior technician, Tony had quickly demonstrated administrative talents and customer service skills that set him apart. When Jeff left, promoting Tony to operations manager felt like the natural choice, despite some grumbling from longer-serving employees. It proved to be one of my best decisions. Under Tony's management, Reynolds Plumbing and Heating thrived. He modernized our scheduling system, implemented more efficient inventory management, and developed a service contract program that provided steady, predictable income. By 2019, we employed 37 people, operated a fleet of 22 vehicles, and had expanded to a second location on the north side of Milwaukee. The company's valuation had climbed to over $3 million, and we had contracts with 5 of the 10 largest property management companies in Wisconsin. My greatest professional pride was our reputation, both with customers and employees. We had plumbers who had been with us for decades and families who had used our services for generations. I paid fair wages, provided good benefits, and maintained the same ethics that had guided me since day one. Honest work at fair prices, no unnecessary upselling, and standing behind every job. Around this time, Margaret's health began to decline more seriously. Her arthritis had worsened, and she developed heart problems that required regular medical attention. I found myself stepping back from the business to care for her, grateful that Tony was capable of handling day-to-day operations without much oversight from me. Our children responded differently to their mother's illness. Michael visited when he could, flying in from California every few months, calling regularly, and helping to research treatments. Lisa's response was more complicated. She would stop by occasionally and help with errands, but she seemed uncomfortable with the realities of her mother's declining health. Her husband Dennis was even less present, often making excuses for why they couldn't visit or help. Margaret passed away peacefully in January of 2019 after a particularly severe bout of pneumonia complicated her heart condition. Her death left a void in my life that nothing could fill. We had been married for 44 years, building both a family and a business together. I threw myself back into work as a way of coping with grief, though at 68, I was beginning to feel the physical toll of the plumbing business. After a few months, I realized I needed to seriously consider retirement planning. Tony was the obvious successor to take over operations, but he didn't have the capital to purchase the business outright. I began exploring options with my accountant and attorney, looking for a structure that would allow me to retire with financial security while ensuring the business continued to thrive under Tony's leadership. The most promising approach seemed to be a gradual buyout over 10 years, where Tony would assume increasing ownership while making payments that would supplement my retirement income. The plan had an additional advantage: continuity for our employees and customers. Just as we were finalizing these discussions, another personal crisis emerged. Emily Watson, my younger sister and only surviving family member from my generation, was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer. Emily lived alone in Cincinnati after her husband's death 5 years earlier. With no children of her own, she had always been close to Michael and Lisa, the niece and nephew she adored. When her diagnosis came, I immediately offered to help in any way possible. Given my experience caring for Margaret during her illness, I felt somewhat prepared for what lay ahead. Emily initially resisted the idea of moving to Milwaukee, not wanting to be a burden, but as her condition deteriorated rapidly, she reluctantly agreed. I converted our first-floor den into a bedroom for her and hired part-time home health aides to assist when I needed to be at work. Emily's presence in the house brought some unexpected brightness during a dark time. Despite her illness, her sense of humor remained intact, and our evenings were often filled with reminiscences about our childhood and stories I'd never shared with my children about their grandparents and our early family life. Emily had been a librarian for 40 years before retiring, and her love of literature meant our conversations were peppered with literary references and book recommendations that kept my mind engaged beyond the daily concerns of business and caregiving. Michael flew in from California several times to visit his aunt, spending quality time with her and helping to coordinate her medical care. Lisa's engagement was again minimal, with brief visits where she seemed uncomfortable and eager to leave. Emily noticed this too, but was characteristically gracious, never complaining about Lisa's absence. "Some people just struggle with illness," she told me one evening. "Lisa reminds me of your father that way, needs to keep suffering at arm's length to protect herself." Emily passed away just 4 months after moving in with me. Her decline was swift but peaceful, managed by a compassionate hospice team who ensured her comfort until the end. At her memorial service, which was small but heartfelt, I was touched to see many of my employees attend, including Tony, who had never even met Emily but came out of respect for me. Lisa and Dennis attended the service but left immediately afterward, citing commitments with their children's activities. The loss of both Margaret and Emily within a year left me feeling untethered. The house seemed too quiet, too empty. I found myself working longer hours again, not from necessity, but to avoid coming home to silence. It was during this period that I began to notice subtle changes in Lisa's behavior toward me. She started calling more frequently and stopping by the house unannounced, often bringing meals or offering to help with household tasks. Initially, I was pleased by this apparent renewal of our relationship, attributing her previous distance to the discomfort Emily had perceived around illness. As my 70th birthday approached in early 2021, I decided it was time to formalize my retirement plans. The arrangement with Tony was taking shape. He would take over as CEO while I transitioned to chairman of the board, working reduced hours and gradually transferring ownership over a 10-year period. This structure would provide me with ongoing income, while allowing Tony time to secure financing for purchasing larger percentages of the company in manageable increments. I mentioned these plans during a Sunday dinner with Lisa, Dennis, and their children, thinking they would be pleased to know I had secured my future and the legacy of the business. Their reaction was unexpected. "Dad, are you sure that's the best approach?" Lisa asked. "A structured buyout could leave you vulnerable if Tony runs into financial problems or decides to change the terms." "Tony's been with me for over 20 years, I replied. "I trust him completely." "I understand that," Dennis chimed in, "but business is business. You should at least explore other options. I have a friend from college, Robert, who's looking to invest in established local businesses. He might be interested in Reynolds, and he could probably offer you a clean break with cash up front." I was surprised by their concern, but appreciated what I thought was genuine interest in my financial security. "Thanks for the suggestion, but I think the arrangement with Tony makes the most sense. It's not just about the money, it's about preserving what I've built." Lisa seemed unusually disappointed by my response, exchanging a look with Dennis that struck me as odd. Looking back, this conversation was a warning sign I completely missed. Another development that winter was the arrival of Sofia Rodriguez, the daughter of one of our longtime plumbers, who joined the company as our marketing manager. Fresh out of graduate school with an MBA, Sofia brought contemporary marketing strategies that had never been part of our business model. She revamped our website, established a social media presence, and implemented a customer relationship management system that significantly improved our follow-up and repeat business rates. Sofia's youth and enthusiasm were infectious, and I enjoyed mentoring her while she brought Reynolds Plumbing and Heating into the digital age. Little did I know how important Sofia would become in the events that followed. In March 2022, while on a job site reviewing a major commercial installation, I experienced chest pains that wouldn't subside. One of our plumbers, Brian, insisted on driving me to the hospital. After a battery of tests, Dr. Howard, a cardiologist, delivered concerning news. I had severe blockages in 3 coronary arteries and needed triple bypass surgery as soon as possible. "Without surgery, you're at high risk for a major heart attack," Dr. Howard explained. The good news is that bypass procedures are very routine these days, with excellent success rates, and you're otherwise in good health for your age, which improves your outlook considerably. The surgery was scheduled for April 15th, giving me just over 2 weeks to prepare. I immediately informed Tony, asking him to take full operational control while I was recovering. I also called Michael, who offered to fly in for the surgery, and Lisa, who lived just 20 minutes away. Michael arrived 3 days before the operation, taking time off from his demanding tech job to help me prepare. He accompanied me to preoperative appointments, helped organize my medications, and spent evenings making sure I understood all aspects of the upcoming procedure and recovery process. His presence was calming and reassuring. Lisa also became surprisingly attentive, visiting daily and often bringing home-cooked meals. She seemed genuinely concerned about my health, asking detailed questions during medical appointments and taking notes on post-operative care instructions. This level of engagement from Lisa was unusual based on her previous behavior during Margaret's and Emily's illnesses, but I attributed the change to maturity and perhaps regret over her limited involvement with her mother's care. About 10 days before my surgery, during one of these visits, Lisa brought up something I hadn't considered. "Dad, have you thought about what happens if there are complications during surgery? Who will make decisions if you're unable to?" The question caught me off guard. With Margaret gone and Michael living across the country, I hadn't established any formal arrangements for such situations. "I guess I hadn't really thought about it," I admitted. "The doctors say the surgery is routine, but I suppose it makes sense to be prepared." "Exactly," Lisa nodded. "Mom used to handle all that, but now." She let the sentence hang. "I think you should consider a medical power of attorney just for while you're recovering. It would allow me to make healthcare decisions if needed and handle any urgent business matters that can't wait until you're back on your feet." Michael, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "That's probably a good idea, Dad. I'll be heading back to California right after your surgery since I can't take more time off." It makes sense for Lisa to have legal authority since she's here locally. Their united front on this issue was persuasive. It seemed like a reasonable precaution, especially since Lisa lived nearby and could respond quickly to any emergencies. I agreed to meet with a lawyer Lisa recommended, a college friend of Dennis named Patricia Lawson. 2 days later, I found myself in Ms. Lawson's office. Patricia was a polished professional in her early 40s, with an efficient manner and a sleek downtown office that spoke of success. Lisa had apparently briefed her thoroughly, as she had documents already prepared when we arrived. "This is a standard temporary power of attorney," she explained, sliding papers across the desk. "It grants Lisa authority to make medical decisions if you're incapacitated and handle urgent financial or business matters during your recovery. It's valid for 60 days from signing unless renewed, which should cover your hospital stay and initial recovery period." I skimmed the dense legal document, noting that it indeed mentioned both medical and financial powers. What I failed to scrutinize, what Patricia conveniently glossed over, was the broad scope of those financial powers, which included the authority to sell assets, enter contracts, and make investment decisions without limitation. Had I been more careful, I might have requested restrictions specifically protecting the business. But I trusted both my daughter and the professional recommendation of a lawyer, so I signed without requesting modifications. Michael flew back to California 2 days after my surgery, once it was clear the procedure had gone well. He had responsibilities at work that couldn't wait any longer but promised to call daily for updates. The surgery itself was successful, but recovery proved more difficult than anticipated. A post-operative infection developed in my chest incision, requiring intravenous antibiotics and extending my hospital stay from the expected 5 days to 10. During this time, I was often foggy from pain medication and antibiotics, drifting in and out of lucidity. Lisa visited daily, bringing small comforts from home and updating me on minor matters, how my garden was doing, neighborhood news, her children's activities. Not once did she mention anything about the business. When I asked about it, her answers were vague reassurances. "Everything's fine, Dad. Tony has it under control. You just focus on getting better." After being discharged, I spent another 2 weeks recovering at home, still on significant pain medication and antibiotics for the persistent infection. Lisa arranged for a home health nurse named Brenda to check on me daily and manage my medication schedule. Brenda was competent but reserved, focused entirely on medical tasks rather than conversation. In retrospect, I realized that between the hospital stay and Brenda's clinical approach, I was effectively isolated from my normal social connections, including business associates. Lisa carefully controlled my phone, bringing it only when she was present and often answering calls on my behalf, telling callers I was resting and couldn't be disturbed. I didn't question this management at the time, assuming it was done with my best interests in mind. By May 10th, 25 days after surgery, I was feeling significantly stronger and clearer-headed. The infection had finally responded to antibiotics, and I had reduced my pain medication to minimal levels. I called Tony directly from my home phone while Lisa was out, wanting to check in and perhaps visit the office briefly the next day. Tony's response immediately set off alarm bells. He sounded uncomfortable, hesitant, and suggested I speak with Lisa before coming to the office. When I pressed him for details, his evasiveness only heightened my concern. Hanging up with Tony, I immediately called Lisa's cell phone. Her response was equally disturbing. "Oh, Dad," she sighed when I told her my plans to visit the office. "I was going to talk to you about this today. There have been some changes while you've been recovering." "Changes? What kind of changes?" I demanded, my heart racing despite the beta blockers I was taking post-surgery. "It's complicated and you're still recovering. Why don't I come over this evening and we can discuss everything?" I insisted she tell me immediately. After a long pause, she finally said, "The business has been sold, Dad." It was a good opportunity that came up suddenly, and since you were in no condition to handle it, I used the power of attorney to accept the offer on your behalf. I felt physically ill. "Sold? To whom? For how much?" "To Robert Jensen," she replied, the same college friend Dennis had mentioned months earlier. "He offered $500,000 cash, which I've deposited in your account." $500,000 for a business worth over $3 million. The room seemed to spin around me. "This is a joke, right? You couldn't possibly have sold my company for a sixth of its value." "Dad, try to calm down. Your blood pressure." "To hell with my blood pressure. What have you done, Lisa?" I was shouting now, my chest tight with fury and disbelief. "The business was struggling," she claimed. "The pandemic hit it harder than you realized. Robert's offer was actually quite generous given the circumstances." This was an outright lie. Reynolds Plumbing and Heating had weathered the pandemic better than most businesses because plumbing and heating services were essential. We'd implemented safety protocols and continued operations throughout, even seeing increased demand for certain services like home office bathroom installations and air purification systems. The company's financial records would show clearly that we were thriving, not struggling. I told Lisa as much, and her tone shifted subtly. "Look, what's done is done. The papers are signed, the money's in your account, and Robert has already taken over operations. You should be thanking me. Now you can truly retire without any stress or responsibility." The conversation deteriorated from there. I demanded to see the sales documents, which she promised to bring over that evening. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence for several minutes before gathering the strength to call Tony again. This time, I was direct. "Tony, I just spoke with Lisa. She says she sold the business. I need you to tell me exactly what happened." Tony's version of events was dramatically different from Lisa's. According to him, Robert Jensen had appeared at the office on April 20th, just 5 days after my surgery, accompanied by Lisa and Dennis. They had announced that I had decided to sell the business effective immediately due to health concerns. When Tony expressed surprise and mentioned our ongoing buyout discussions, Lisa had presented the power of attorney document and explained that my surgical complications had forced a change in plans. Over the next 2 weeks, Robert had conducted what Tony described as a cursory review of the company's books, focusing primarily on client lists, equipment inventory, and outstanding contracts. He had shown little interest in the detailed financial statements that would have revealed the company's true value. Lisa had actively discouraged Tony from contacting me directly, insisting I was heavily sedated and that doctors had advised against any business discussions that might raise my blood pressure. The sale had been finalized on May 5th, just 5 days before I learned about it. Most disturbingly, Tony revealed that he had overheard a conversation between Dennis and Robert in the parking lot, discussing a finder's fee of $100,000 to be paid in cash once the deal closed. "I'm so sorry, Frank," Tony said, his voice breaking. "I tried to call you several times, but Lisa always intercepted. She said you were too ill to talk. I should have tried harder, found some way to reach you directly." I assured Tony this wasn't his fault. Before ending our call, I asked one more crucial question. "Who else knows about the sale?" "Everyone at the company," he replied. "Robert held a staff meeting yesterday to introduce himself as the new owner. He's already changed the name to Jensen Plumbing and HVAC on the website and ordered new signs and vehicle decals." I thanked Tony and promised to be in touch soon. My mind was racing, calculating my next steps. I needed legal advice immediately, but first I wanted to see the situation for myself. The next morning I called a cab to take me to the office, the building I had purchased 20 years earlier and expanded twice as the business grew. As promised, the Reynolds Plumbing and Heating sign had already been replaced with a temporary banner reading Jensen Plumbing and HVAC. Inside, the reception area felt different somehow, with unfamiliar faces behind the counter. A young woman I didn't recognize asked if she could help me. "I'm Frank Reynolds," I said simply. "I'd like to see Robert Jensen." Her eyes widened slightly in recognition, and she hurried to the back offices. Moments later, Robert emerged, looking surprised and uncomfortable. He was younger than I expected, perhaps mid-30s, with the polished appearance of someone who had never gotten his hands dirty with actual plumbing work. "Frank, good to see you up and about. Lisa said you were still bedridden." Clearly, she was mistaken, I replied coldly. Just like she was mistaken about having the authority to sell my business for a fraction of its worth. Robert shifted nervously but maintained his composure. "Look, Frank, I understand this is a shock, but the deal is done. My lawyers assure me the power of attorney Lisa held gave her full legal authority to act on your behalf." "We'll see about that," I said, turning to leave. But before I did, I noticed several long-time employees watching from the workshop doorway. I raised my voice to ensure they all heard. "I did not authorize this sale. My business was stolen from me while I was recovering from heart surgery. This isn't over." As I was leaving, Sofia Rodriguez, our young marketing manager, followed me outside. "Mr. Reynolds," she said urgently, "I need to talk to you. Not here. Can I meet you somewhere?" We arranged to meet at a coffee shop 2 blocks away. 20 minutes later, Sofia arrived, looking anxious but determined. She pulled out her phone and showed me something that made my blood run cold. Text messages between Lisa and Robert dating back 6 months, long before my heart problems emerged. The messages discussed the potential acquisition of Reynolds Plumbing and Heating in explicit detail, including strategies for convincing Frank to sell, or finding another approach if he resists. "How did you get these?" I asked, stunned by the evidence of long-term plotting. Sofia explained that Robert had given her his phone to upload company photos to social media the previous day. While doing so, A text from Lisa had appeared on the screen with language that raised red flags. Concerned, Sophia had taken the opportunity to take screenshots of their conversation history before returning the phone. "I knew something was wrong," she said. "The way they announced the sale, how quickly it happened while you were in the hospital, it didn't add up. And the price is ridiculous. Everyone knows that." I was deeply grateful for Sophia's loyalty and quick thinking. The text messages provided crucial evidence that this wasn't a sudden opportunity that Lisa had seized during my illness, but rather a calculated plan set in motion long before my surgery. That evening, Lisa and Dennis showed up at my house unannounced, bringing the sales documents as promised. I had spent the afternoon researching lawyers specializing in elder law and cases of financial exploitation, making an appointment with one for the following day. I was calm when they arrived, determined not to reveal what I had learned from Tony and Sophia. Lisa seemed annoyed to find me up and dressed rather than in bed. "Dad, you shouldn't be pushing yourself," she scolded. "The nurse said you need to rest." "I'm feeling much better," I replied evenly. "Let's see those documents." Dennis placed a folder on the coffee table. Inside were various legal papers documenting the sale of Reynolds Plumbing and Heating to Jensen Enterprises, LLC, for the sum of $500,000. The signature on the documents was Lisa's, with the power of attorney clearly referenced. As I reviewed the papers, Lisa launched into a rehearsed-sounding explanation of why the sale was in my best interest. "The business has been struggling more than you realize, Dad. The pandemic, supply chain issues, increasing competition. Robert's offer was actually quite generous given the circumstances. And what about the $100,000 kickback Robert is paying Dennis?" I asked calmly, watching their faces. The effect was immediate. Dennis's face drained of color while Lisa's eyes narrowed dangerously. "What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice suddenly hard. "Tony overheard your discussion in the parking lot," I explained. "And Sophia showed me your text messages with Robert going back 6 months. This wasn't a sudden opportunity. You've been planning this for a long time." The pretense of concerned daughter immediately dropped. Lisa's expression turned cold and calculating. "So what if we have? You've been running that company into the ground for years, refusing to modernize or expand properly. Robert has actual business training and vision. He'll make it more successful than you ever could. And the fact that you sold a $3 million business for $500,000 had nothing to do with the $100,000 Dennis is getting under the table." I challenged. Dennis, always the weaker personality, began to stammer excuses, but Lisa cut him off with a sharp look. "Dad," she said in a patronizing tone I'd never heard her use before, "you haven't been yourself lately. Even before the surgery, you were getting forgetful and confused. The doctors mentioned the possibility of early-stage dementia during your pre-op consultations." This bold-faced lie stunned me. No doctor had ever suggested cognitive issues. I had been sharp enough to run a multi-million-dollar business right up until my surgery. "That's why the power of attorney was so important," she continued smoothly. "And why we acted quickly to secure your financial future by selling the business while it still had value. If you don't remember these discussions, that just proves my point." I was momentarily speechless at the audacity of her gaslighting. Dennis jumped in, his sales training evident in his smooth delivery. "Frank, we're only trying to help. The stress of running a business at your age isn't good for your heart. Now you can relax and enjoy your retirement with the $500,000, which is more than enough to live comfortably. Get out of my house," I said quietly. "Both of you. Now." After they left, I sat in my recliner and tried to process the depth of betrayal I had just witnessed. My own daughter had orchestrated the theft of my life's work, and now she was attempting to make me doubt my own sanity to cover her tracks. The cold calculation of it was breathtaking. The next morning I called Michael in California. It was 5 a.m. his time, but this couldn't wait. "Dad, what's wrong?" He answered, instantly alert despite the early hour. I explained everything: the surgery complications, the power of attorney, the sale of the business, and Lisa's attempts to gaslight me about dementia. Michael's reaction was instant and furious. "I'm booking a flight right now. I'll be there by tonight." True to his word, Michael arrived that evening, bringing with him not just emotional support but also the analytical mind that had made him successful in tech. While I had been focused on the emotional betrayal, Michael immediately began thinking strategically. "First thing tomorrow, we're getting you a complete cognitive assessment," he declared. "We need to document that you're fully competent and always have been. Then we're meeting with the best elder law attorney in Wisconsin." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Dr. Melissa Chen, a respected neurologist, conducted a comprehensive cognitive assessment and documented that I showed no signs of dementia or cognitive impairment. Her report specifically noted, "Mr. Reynolds demonstrates above-average cognitive function for his age group, with no indications of any degenerative neurological condition." Armed with this medical documentation, Michael and I met with James Harper, an attorney specializing in elder law and financial exploitation cases. His office walls were lined with credentials and awards, but what impressed me most was his immediate grasp of the situation. "This is unfortunately not uncommon," he explained after hearing our story. "Family members using medical crises to gain control of assets. The fact that you signed the power of attorney so close to your surgery, with a lawyer connected to your son-in-law, raises serious red flags. And the massive undervaluation of the business, combined with the personal benefit to your daughter and son-in-law, suggests clear self-dealing." James advised us that we had multiple potential legal avenues. We could challenge the validity of the power of attorney itself, argue that Lisa had breached her fiduciary duty by not acting in my best interest, and potentially pursue claims of fraud, conversion, and unjust enrichment. He warned me, however, that legal battles against family members are emotionally draining, and that proving Lisa had acted in bad faith might be challenging. "I don't care how hard it is," I told him. "This isn't just about the money, though $2.5 million is certainly worth fighting for. It's about justice, about not letting them get away with this betrayal." James nodded. "Then let's get started." Over the next few days, Michael and I worked to gather evidence. Sophia provided formal statements about the text messages she had seen and the circumstances surrounding the sale. Tony contributed detailed information about the company's true financial position, showing it was thriving rather than struggling as Lisa had claimed. We also contacted several business valuation experts who reviewed our financial records and confirmed that $3 million was, if anything, a conservative estimate of the company's worth. Meanwhile, I was facing another unexpected challenge. Word of the dispute had spread through the company, and employees were being forced to choose sides. Many of the long-term staff stood firmly with me, outraged by what Lisa and Robert had done. Others, particularly newer employees, were uncertain or feared for their jobs if they appeared disloyal to the new ownership. The strain was taking a toll on company operations and morale. One unexpected ally emerged during this time: Eleanor Daly, Chuck's widow. Though she had remarried and moved to the suburbs years ago, she had maintained connections with many of the long-time employees. When she heard what had happened, she reached out to offer support and, crucially, information. "Chuck kept detailed records of everything," she told me when we met for coffee, "including the company's real estate transactions and equipment purchases. I still have boxes of his files in the attic. They might help establish the company's actual value." Those records proved invaluable, providing historical documentation of assets that Lisa and Robert had significantly undervalued in the sales agreement. As we prepared our legal case, Lisa and Dennis launched a counteroffensive. They began telling family friends and business associates that I was suffering from dementia and that Lisa had sold the business to protect me from making poor decisions. They claimed the $500,000 sale price was fair given undisclosed liabilities and outdated equipment that supposedly plagued the company. Most disturbingly, they attempted to contact my doctors directly, seeking medical information they could use to support their dementia narrative. Fortunately, medical privacy laws prevented such disclosures without my consent. Robert Jensen, meanwhile, was making rapid changes at the company. He fired several longtime employees, including Sofia Rodriguez, who he correctly suspected of helping me. He brought in his own management team, changed long-standing vendor relationships, and began aggressively upselling unnecessary services to established customers, exactly the kind of practice I had always forbidden. The company's sterling reputation in the community was quickly tarnishing under his leadership. Our legal filing in June 2022 sent shockwaves through the local business community. The lawsuit named Lisa, Dennis, Robert, and attorney Patricia Lawson as defendants, alleging conspiracy, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and elder exploitation. We sought to void the sale entirely and recover damages for the harm done to the company's value and reputation in the interim. The legal battle was even more grueling than James had warned. Lisa and Dennis hired Bradley Hamilton, an aggressive attorney known for hardball tactics in business disputes. Hamilton doubled down on the dementia narrative, presenting carefully selected examples of normal age-related memory lapses as evidence of cognitive decline. They claimed Lisa had acted out of love and concern, protecting me from making poor business decisions as my mental capacity diminished. To bolster their case, they found two former employees with grudges against me who were willing to testify that I had shown signs of confusion in the months before my surgery. Robert Jensen, represented by a separate attorney from a prestigious corporate firm, insisted he had paid fair market value given the various undisclosed liabilities of the company, liabilities that conveniently couldn't be specifically identified. He portrayed himself as an innocent buyer caught in a family dispute, despite the evidence of his long-term collusion with Lisa and Dennis. The discovery phase of the lawsuit revealed even more disturbing details. Financial records showed that immediately after the sale closed, Robert had taken out a business loan for $1.5 million using Reynolds Plumbing and Heating's assets and contracts as collateral. Clear evidence he knew the business was worth far more than what he paid. We also uncovered emails between Patricia Lawson and Dennis, discussing how to structure the power of attorney to give Lisa maximum authority with minimum oversight. Most damning of all were bank records showing a $100,000 cash withdrawal from Robert's account the day after the sale closed, followed by a $50,000 deposit into Lisa and Dennis's account the same day. The remaining $50,000 had been withdrawn in cash and couldn't be traced. The case attracted media attention, with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel running a front-page story titled "Plumbing Empire Sold While Owner Recovered from Surgery." Family divided over allegations of elder exploitation. The publicity was difficult to endure. Having my family's dirty laundry aired in public was humiliating, but it also brought unexpected support. Former customers wrote letters to the editor defending my character and business practices. Several competitors in the plumbing industry, who I had always treated with professional respect, came forward with statements about the company's excellent reputation and substantial market value. Through it all, Michael remained my rock. He took a leave of absence from his tech job in California, working remotely when necessary, but primarily focusing on supporting me through the legal battle. His analytical mind helped make sense of complex financial documents, and his steady presence kept me grounded when the stress and betrayal threatened to overwhelm me. The legal process dragged on for nearly 18 months, draining my energy and much of the $500,000 that had been deposited in my account. The stress caused my blood pressure to spike repeatedly, concerning my doctors, but I refused to give up or settle for less than what was right. As the trial date approached in November 2023, an unexpected development occurred. Eleanor Daly's son, Marcus, who had been 12 when his father Chuck died, had recently graduated from law school. Now 25 and working for a corporate firm in Chicago, he asked to join our legal team pro bono. "Your company put me through college," he explained simply. "I want to help make this right." With Marcus's fresh perspective and determination, our case grew stronger. He uncovered additional evidence of the conspiracy, including deleted emails that technical experts were able to recover from Robert's company servers. These emails detailed discussions between Robert, Lisa, and Dennis about how to approach me about selling, and when it became clear I wouldn't agree to their terms, how to use my upcoming surgery as an opportunity to execute the sale without my knowledge. The 3-day trial in November 2023 laid bare the ugly truth for everyone to see. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Judge Helen Mercer, seemed particularly troubled by the timeline of events and the clear conflict of interest. On the second day, Lisa took the stand and maintained that she had acted in my best interest, claiming I had shown signs of cognitive decline. Under Marcus Daly's cross-examination, however, her story began to crumble. "Ms. Reynolds," Marcus asked, "can you provide specific examples of your father's alleged cognitive decline prior to his surgery?" Lisa described incidents where I had forgotten appointments or misplaced items, normal occurrences for people of any age. "And did you ever raise these concerns with his doctors?" Marcus continued, "Did you ever seek a medical evaluation for these supposed symptoms?" Lisa had to admit she had not. "In fact," Marcus pressed, "there is no medical documentation whatsoever suggesting your father has any cognitive impairment, is there?" "The doctors didn't recognize the signs," Lisa insisted. "I saw them because I'm his daughter. Yet you never mentioned these concerns to your brother, did you?" Marcus asked. "You never suggested to Michael that your father needed cognitive testing before the surgery?" "Michael doesn't live here," Lisa said defensively. "He wouldn't have noticed. But you didn't mention it to him at all, did you? Not in phone calls, not in emails, not when he was here for the surgery. The first time Michael heard about any cognitive concerns was after you had sold the business for a fraction of its value. Isn't that correct?" Lisa's silence was damning. On the third day before our closing arguments, Lisa's attorney approached with a settlement offer. Robert would return the business to me in exchange for the $500,000 he had paid, plus $250,000 for improvements and expansions he claimed to have made. After consulting with James and Marcus, I rejected the offer outright. It wasn't nearly enough to compensate for the damage done to the company's reputation and the loss of key employees. And by that point, I wanted the judgment on public record. The judge's verdict, delivered a week later, was vindicating. She found that Lisa had indeed breached her fiduciary duty under the power of attorney by engaging in self-dealing and failing to act in my best interests. She voided the sale entirely, ordering Robert to return control of the business to me. She also ordered Lisa to repay the $50,000 she had received and Dennis to disclose the whereabouts of the other $50,000 cash payment or face contempt charges. Additionally, The judge referred the matter to the district attorney's office for possible criminal charges related to elder financial exploitation and ordered Patricia Lawson to face disciplinary proceedings before the State Bar Association for her role in drafting the deliberately broad power of attorney without ensuring I understood its implications. I had won, at least on paper, but the victory was bittersweet. Regaining control of Reynolds Plumbing and Heating was complicated after 8 months under Robert's mismanagement. Many long-term employees had left, uncomfortable with the new ownership and the unethical business practices Robert had implemented. Customer relationships had suffered, with some of our oldest clients having switched to competitors after receiving substandard service or being pressured into unnecessary upgrades. The company's reputation in the community had been damaged by both Robert's practices and the public legal battle. And most painfully, my relationship with Lisa was destroyed beyond repair. In the days following the verdict, I had hoped for some sign of remorse from Lisa, an acknowledgement of the wrong she had done, perhaps even an explanation for why she had betrayed me so completely. Instead, she and Dennis doubled down, telling anyone who would listen that I had used my wealth and connections to railroad them in court, that they had only been trying to help me, and that my vindictiveness proved my mental instability. They moved to Florida shortly after the trial, taking my grandchildren with them. The last thing Lisa said to me was, "You chose your precious business over your family. I hope it was worth it." Those words haunt me, not because they make me doubt my decision to fight for justice, but because they reveal how fundamentally she misunderstood what the business represented. It wasn't just a financial asset. It was my life's work, my contribution to the community, and the livelihood of dozens of families who depended on the jobs I'd created. To have that stolen by my own child was a betrayal I couldn't simply accept. The aftermath has been a slow process of rebuilding, both personally and professionally. Tony, who had remained loyal throughout the ordeal, was essential in getting the business back on track. We worked together to contact former employees, bringing back as many as we could with improved compensation packages and profit-sharing options. Sofia Rodriguez returned as marketing director, with an expanded role that included community relations, working to repair the company's image through charitable initiatives and transparent business practices. I implemented a proper succession plan, with Tony gradually buying ownership shares over 5 years with clearly documented terms. Michael, despite returning to California, took an active interest in the company's financial oversight, reviewing statements monthly and participating in quarterly board meetings virtually. His technical expertise also helped us modernize our operations further, implementing systems that improved efficiency and customer service. As for me, at 73, I scaled back my daily involvement but continued to serve as chairman, coming into the office a few days a week to mentor younger employees and maintain relationships with long-standing customers. The legal battle aged me in ways the heart surgery didn't, but there's also a resilience that comes from fighting for what's right and prevailing. One unexpected development came 6 months after the trial, when I received a call from Jack, my grandson, now 17. He had secretly maintained contact with Michael, and having reached an age where he could make more independent decisions, wanted to reconnect with me. Our reunion was emotional and healing. Jack revealed that Lisa and Dennis had told him and his sister Emma that I was mentally unstable and had cut them off, rather than admitting they had taken the children away. Now that he was older, Jack had begun questioning their version of events and had reached out to Michael for the truth. Through Jack, I was eventually able to reconnect with 15-year-old Emma as well, though our relationship remains tentative and conducted largely through video calls without Lisa's knowledge. The children's perspectives offered insight into Lisa's possible motivations that I had never considered. According to Jack, Lisa had always felt overshadowed by Michael, believing I favored my son and his academic achievements over her more modest career. The business, in Lisa's mind, represented another area where she felt excluded, despite the fact that she had never expressed interest in joining it. In her distorted thinking, selling the business was both a way to secure financial gain and to destroy something she perceived I valued more than her. This understanding doesn't excuse Lisa's actions, but helps me contextualize them within a longer history of resentment I had never fully recognized. The hardest part remains the family fracture. I miss my daughter, despite her betrayal, and mourn the relationship we might have had. Michael attempts to maintain minimal contact with his sister for the sake of the children, acting as an occasional go-between, but the situation remains deeply strained. The holidays are particularly difficult, marked by the empty chairs where Lisa, Dennis, and until recently, Emma and Jack should be. There are moments when I wonder if Lisa was right, if I chose the business over family. But then I remind myself that she was the one who made it an either-or proposition. She was the one who betrayed my trust, stole my life's work, and then tried to gaslight me into believing I was losing my mind. Standing up to that kind of exploitation wasn't choosing business over family. It was refusing to be a victim. Beyond the personal lessons, my experience highlights the importance of proper legal protections, even, perhaps especially, when family is involved. A more carefully drafted power of attorney with specific limitations would have prevented the sale of major assets without additional oversight. Regular cognitive assessments documented by independent physicians could have countered the false dementia narrative. And having multiple trusted individuals involved in major decisions could have provided checks and balances against self-dealing. Most importantly, my story demonstrates that elder financial exploitation can happen to anyone, even successful business owners, who are mentally sharp and physically recovering well from health setbacks. The temporary vulnerability created by my surgery was all the opening Lisa needed to execute a plan she and Dennis had been developing for months. 2 years have passed since the court returned my business to me. Reynolds Plumbing and Heating has largely regained its footing and reputation in the community. We've even expanded, opening a third location and developing a specialized division focused on eco-friendly plumbing and heating solutions. An initiative Sophia spearheaded that has proven both profitable and popular in our increasingly environmentally conscious market. Tony is now effectively running daily operations as CEO, with me serving more as a mentor and advisor. The planned ownership transition is proceeding smoothly, with Tony now holding a 25% stake in the company. Michael visits monthly rather than just on holidays, and our bond has grown stronger through the adversity we face together. He's even talking about potentially moving back to Wisconsin in a few years, having developed a new appreciation for family connections after witnessing how quickly they can be severed. Jack has applied to colleges in Wisconsin, hoping to be closer to me and reconnect with the family history he feels was kept from him. Emma is showing interest in business and has asked if she could intern at Reynolds during summer breaks when she's older, a request that brings both joy and complicated emotions, given her mother's betrayal. My health has stabilized, though my cardiologist reminds me regularly to manage stress. I've taken up fishing, something I never had time for during my working years, and joined a group of retirees who meet weekly for coffee and conversation. This group has become an unexpected source of support and friendship, with several members having experienced their own family conflicts or late-life betrayals. Life continues, reshaped but not defined by betrayal. The experience has taught me that trust must be tempered with appropriate legal protections, that family dynamics can harbor hidden resentments even after decades of seemingly normal relationships, and that standing up for oneself in the face of exploitation is not selfish but necessary. If there's any silver lining to this painful chapter, it's the strengthening of other relationships, with Michael, with loyal employees like Tony and Sophia, with my grandchildren who are finding their way back to me, and with new friends who understand life's complexities. I've also found purpose in sharing my story through talks at senior centers and business organizations, hoping to prevent others from experiencing similar betrayals. For anyone facing a similar situation, betrayal by those you trusted most, especially during times of vulnerability, I can offer this hard-won wisdom: stand firm in your truth, document everything, find advocates who believe in you, and remember that seeking justice isn't selfish or vengeful. It's necessary not just for yourself but for others who might be similarly exploited if such behavior goes unchallenged. The road to recovery, both financial and emotional, is long and often lonely. But there is strength to be found in standing up for yourself, even when, perhaps especially when, those who should have protected you are the ones causing harm. That strength has carried me through the darkest days and continues to sustain me as I move forward, still at the helm of the business I built, still determined to protect the legacy I created through decades of honest work and personal sacrifice. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.